Hey there, it's Christian from 7 Gaming Network, and I'm here with another Tactica for Star Wars Destiny. Now today we're going to talk about this chap, Jango Fett, the lethal mercenary. So what I'm going to do, we'll talk through the card itself, so we'll talk through the sides and points value and his ability and so on, and then we'll have a look at his role, how you can often see him being used in the game, or use him himself, and then also maybe some decks that he could slot into. And how he works in there, and also what to do if you're playing against him rather than using him. So let's have a look at these die sides first. He's got 3 damage sides, so we're pretty happy with that. 50% chance of rolling some sort of damage on his die is really solid. It's an interesting thing though, because Fantasy Flight have gone with a bit of a mix on him. So we've got 2 shooting sides, one of which is a 2, which is very nice, and then he's got a 1 melee. So we might refer to him as a split damage character. Now that can create some slightly awkward situations, because as a general rule when we're trying to build decks, we want to have, on the whole, we want to try and match damage. That's most usually what we're trying to do. And especially in a deck where we're trying to do the damage quite quickly, quite fast, and we haven't maybe got many control elements. That's definitely something to bear in mind when you come to build your deck if you're going to use Jango. However, having said that, they're all black. That means that they're not modded, they're going to happen, and that's really good, because of course that does enable lots of other modded sides to be more likely to happen then. Now again, it is slightly awkward because it is split damage, and so you might want to probably pick, and most people tend to think about pairing him more with those ranged upgrades, because obviously you've got double chance of rolling a ranged damage result rather than the melee damage result. However, we're really happy with 3 damage sides. He's a damage character, he's going to be able to bring damage to the table, and that's generally what we're going to use Jango for. So he's also got 2 resources on him. This is another example of where it really feels that they've done a great job again of bringing in that theme and marrying it with mechanics and bringing these characters to life. Jango brings damage, and quite versatile damage, and he brings resources. That really is what you kind of expect from Jango and what we see and know of him in the lore and in the background. So I really love the theme with this character. But these 2 resources, we've got one straight up resource side and one modded resource side. I think that's really not that bad, because well, it can help pay for upgrades first and foremost, and Jango needs upgrades. He needs his jetpacks and his blasters, he needs his weaponry, he needs his things that's going to enable him to make the most of those 3 damage sides. So you're going to want resources to quickly get upgrades onto Jango and improve him. And then your other thing is that he's yellow, and so he's going to go in Crime Lord decks quite potentially. He is going to be able to create resources for Jabba, who he often gets paired with, and we'll talk a bit more about that deck list later. But also, of course, he's yellow himself, and so he can be a potential target for the Crime Lord die if necessary. So he's a great backup to Jabba in that respect. Okay, 10 health, not great. It's very average really for a character who's dealing out lots of damage, and an elite unique character perhaps, as we often use him elite Jango. It's quite nice. But I would say 10 health, he really can melt away pretty quickly. The way that Destiny works, of course, is we really do have that ability to sort of alpha strike with damage, and so 10 can disappear pretty quickly. And what we tend to see as well, he's not usually played with defensive upgrades, and that can make him quite hard to keep him alive. He's there to deal damage. He's your classic, what we'd call a glass cannon in parlance. He's pretty easy to kill, to destroy, but he can do a lot of damage if you get the right upgrades on him. Now then, this ability, because this ability is very good, and again it's very, very Jango. We would expect him to have quick reflexes to respond very fast in battle, and that's what he does. After an opponent activates a character, you may activate this character. On the face of it, of course, it doesn't seem brilliant until you're playing it through and you realise that it's breaking one of those big fundamental rules of Destiny, which is I go, you go, I go, you go. If you can break that, as we've seen with the ambush ability, with things like raise ability, anything that does that and changes that dynamic is a very powerful thing. So what Jango is able to do is when a character on your opponent's side activates, you can tap him, you can roll his dice in, and of course then it's going to come back to you and you're going to be able to resolve those dice straight away. And the impact of that cannot be understated. That is absolutely the main pressure that Jango is going to bring to the table. It's that double action, roll his dice out, and then potentially resolve 5, 6, maybe even more damage. Okay, so that's what you always have to be bearing in mind if you're playing against Jango, and we'll talk a little bit about tactics you can use against him. That ability is almost why he's in there and how you base the whole play of your deck with Jango in around. Okay, so let's have a little think about some of the decks that you might put Jango into. Well, a very classic pairing already in this early meta is to go along with Jabba. Now this makes a lot of sense. If you want to learn a bit more about Jabba, I've done another Tactica video on him, and so you can get perhaps a bit more detail as to why he's so good with Jango. But in a nutshell, Jabba is a control character. He brings lots of focus, and essentially he buffs up. He makes other players, he makes his other characters better. So pairing those two means you're more likely to get your damage through with Jango, and of course that's why you're playing him. His role is to get damage out, and Jabba's only going to help Jango do that. So Jabba's bringing lots of focus, and of course that whole secondary target for Crime Lord thing can be a really powerful situation to be in, and Jabba Jango can bring a lot of resources to the table, which really can make that the Crime Lord come to life. I will do a Tactica on the Crime Lord card because it's fantastic, and also you have to mention theme. Who doesn't want to play Jabba and Jango fighting together or working together? It really is part of why this game's so great. Now another really interesting combination that you could have is Jango Veers. Now there aren't many super strong red cards in Villain at the moment. I think generally regarded as being slightly underpowered perhaps with the events and that come with Villain Red. But Veers himself brings 3 damage sides, although one of them is modded. They're all ranged. That's going quite nicely with Jango. And of course it means that Jango then gets access to things like the various rifles and blasters that are the red upgrades. So it's really easy then to have quite a lot of, and they can be quite cheap as well. You're bringing stuff that's very easy to upgrade Jango with and get him being able to dish out more damage. So that's a really nice combo. And then just being able to have things like vehicles in the deck and having TIE fighters, bringing even more damage and the potential to get rid of the shields for you so that Jango can do a bigger strike. And of course in yellow we've got Cunning available. Whether you included a card like that in a deck like this, but hey, if you want to get more chances to get rid of shields on characters, or you've got a meta with lots of shield decks, you're playing against lots of Qui-Gon decks or something, then Jango Veers with TIE fighters and maybe Cunning in could be a little shout there. But it's lots of shooty is the way to look at Jango Veers, and it's quite a scary amount of damage. You can finish your games pretty quick with that deck if it goes off. In terms of tactics against Jango, well, don't forget his ability. That's important. You need to be taking that into account. And I would say that generally you can either delay your turn a little bit, i.e. wait a little while before you activate your characters. Make the most of your activations when they come, because remember, he's going to activate really quickly in response. if you've got a character who's close to death, or within range of, depending on how many upgrades Jango's got, knowing that Jango could god roll and then you're in trouble, I'd be very careful with your activations without trying to sort out that character who's in danger or potential danger. And the classic way to deal with it is to shield up. Get the shields out, and that's going to blunt some of Jango's force that he can bring to the table in response to you activating your characters. He's not usually defensively upgraded. He's a glass cannon. The people using him know that. They're trying to get the most out of his damage. They're unlikely to stick things like hunker down on him or some such. They may do, but generally he's not defensively upgraded, and so you can go all out against him. I would chuck all the damage you have against Jango, get him off the table pretty quickly, because especially if it's something like Jabba Jango, well, if Jabba's left by himself, unless they've managed to get Crime Lord out, then you're probably going to be pretty good to win by getting rid of Jango as quickly as you can. Another thing that can be quite helpful against Jango is he often relies upon his damage sides to enable modded upgrade dice that have gone with him. So I'm thinking like Jetpack is a classic one to combine with Jango, and really what you can use is if you've got any sort of form of spot removal, so we're thinking cards like Isolation or He Doesn't Like You, things like that. Those kind of cards to be able to get rid of Jango's dice, or get rid of whatever that the black straight up damage roll is. If you can get rid of those dice from the table, you're going to neuter a lot of the plus modded damage, which can be really significant. I mean, it can be the difference between getting hit for 5 or 6 damage and nothing just by being able to control one die. Again, if you're seeing quite a bit of Jango in your meta, and they're using those upgrades, which they normally will do with him, then that could be a good shout, and there's the kind of cards you might want to include in your deck to be able to deal with him a little more, either full on die removal or even use the force and be able to just turn the die. So there's Jango. He's a great character. He's a lot of fun to play with. He's pretty straightforward. He's got a very powerful ability, and paired with, I think, really good sides, and of course, well, pretty fantastic sort of background. I can't wait to see what they do with his son Boba Fett. That could be a really exciting character, and that'll be the dream, of course, having Boba and Jabba working together. But I'd be getting Jango in your decks, playing with him. There's a whole, I've highlighted 2 possible builds you could use him in. There are many more out there that are really great. He's just a fun and really quite damagey character, so get using him and get enjoying him. Until next time.